All right, good morning, everyone, or evening as the case may be for people across the pond. Um, Sorry about the late start, had some technical difficulties. I forgot I was using a brand new computer for streaming and hadn't actually set it up yet, so that was fun. Anyway, I am going to pop open my chat here and we're going to dive in. So today we're just doing a quick look at some disposables. I have a disposables library. Let me bring that up here. I have a disposables library that's pretty commonly used. I don't remember how many downloads it has at the moment. Actually, good question. Let me see. Pull that up here. Looks like it currently has almost 63 million downloads. That's a lot. So I use it in some of my other libraries, and it's also usable just on its own. So the main thing that this disposables library does is it makes sure that your disposals um, are all appropriate. It makes implementing disposal a lot easier. So the core types here. Actually, I think I'm on a branch here, and I'm going to back out of that. But anyway, the core types here are these single disposables that just make sure that dispose is only called once, essentially, regardless of what thread it's called from or anything like that. And then by default, any other thread that simultaneously calls dispose will actually wait for the dispose to complete. So that's a nice little additional semantic there. And it's pretty straightforward library. And then I did some work on it about a year ago, and I added reference counter disposables, which most people don't need, but when you need them, you really need them. So I added those in, and then I was looking at this library. I was going to add something else to this library a couple weeks ago or so, and realized, hey, I never even documented that stuff that I added in like a year ago. So it's probably about time for me to do that. So this is kind of like me catching up to this library, so to speak. Yeah, so here's where I am. And this is going to be kind of random. Today, probably going to do some docs. I might add in those things that I was thinking about adding. And I'm probably going to do a release, but I don't want to do a version 3 release. I'm going to rethink how I'm approaching version 3. Because this is a commonly enough used library that backwards incompatible changes are just not a good idea anymore. So technically speaking, with semantic versioning, a major version number means, well, you can do backwards incompatible changes. In reality, in the .NET ecosystem, that is unexpected. It's always unexpected, unfortunately. So that means, well, I can't really say unfortunately, but essentially what it means is binary backwards compatibility is expected indefinitely. And you better have a good reason for not doing that. And unfortunately, my version 3 branch right now is not binary backwards compatible. So I want to do some work on that. I don't know if I'm going to release an updated V3 or not today. I don't know if I'll get that far. But I want to actually back out to version 2, work on some docs, add in a few more things without actually taking on the big version 3 changes. And if you go to the website here, I'm just going to pull this over. So here's NuGet. If you go to the website, I've got an issue for, yeah, this is what I want to do today, hopefully. And this one too. And if you look at my version 3 era plans, which I wrote out forever ago, actually pretty much everything in here went into version 2, which is good. This one is harder to do in a backwards compatible way. It's not really possible. Yeah, so I did all of these changes. These like this one here is also not backwards compatible, and I did all those in a version 3 preview. Yeah, about a year ago. But what I want to do is do some more work on version 2, and then redo version 3 so that it's actually backwards compatible. I want to do binary backwards compatible. So I don't mind adding like obsolescence warnings and stuff like that, which can fail builds. That's fine. Move things around into different namespaces is a little bit more tricky because you also have to have a type with the same name and the same API in the old namespace. So I don't know if that one's going to be possible. I'm probably not going to be able to get to that today anyway. But that's the plan. I want to pull in some of these. This Nevermind disposable and this systems collections immutable. Both of these are changes that already exist on the version 3 branch, but I want to pull those into version 2, and then release a new version 2, and also document the reference count of disposables because I apparently never actually did that a year ago when I added them to the library. My bad. Anyway, so that's the plan for today. It's just some work on one of these libraries that I maintain. Nothing terribly exciting. I don't even know what I have here that's not in here. Oh, okay. Yeah, so we've got that. So I already figured out, that's right, I was doing this, working on this a couple of weeks ago. And I already figured out which version of System Collections Immutable I actually need. This was added, or this was updated. There's an old issue in the repo, so I had to update the version in order to avoid the million of DLLs dependencies coming in thing, which I'm sure you've seen if you've worked in .NET at all with .NET standard libraries. This is still a .NET standard library. I don't think there would be any benefit in adding a .NET 6 target explicitly. So I'm just going to keep it on .NET standard. I'm fine with that. Yeah, so I want to pull this in, and I'm just going to, a little, sometimes I just take notes if my keyboard works. There it goes. All right. Let's just keep this note here. What I want to do. So we're going to need immutable 150 is what we're going to need to change that to. And that's just for that. The one person had an issue where they wanted to, relax that version requirement because they were having the version dependency problems, which is pretty common. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and back this out. And boy, I am not good at naming branches. All right, reorg I think is version 3. So I'm going to switch back to master branch and see here, I'm already over here. Make sure we're up to date here. Does it do anything? Okay. So we are up to date, and well, let's just put in that version change right now before we forget. Okay? All right. I'm going to say this is my new version here, dependency, and I think that would work. I did do the research for that a couple of days ago to make sure that is proper. Yeah, so let me. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, I shouldn't have done that on master, but, actually it'll be fine. Okay, so we can, let's see. And the other thing that I wanted to add was this Nevermind disposable pattern, which I think I have I think I did this a couple weeks ago. Let me look at my Git history here. This is the real open source development. Yeah, here we go. Fix concurrent behavior. What is that? We got the reference count of disposables, which I need to document. a lot of today is just going to be writing documentation. We released version 2.3, started it on a reorg, and I just want to take it because that makes me a little bit nervous that I have a commit with that in it. Really? Is that a bug I have? Wow. I don't know. Which is out. Okay. Yeah, this is just more of a correctness thing, but the other one is more serious here. This, if we have, I gotta think through this here. So our flag does not say execute concurrently, but we want to execute serially. Yeah, my bad. Wow, that flag is reversed. Okay, that's a major bug that I'm going to pull into this next release then. I'm just going to pull this whole commit. So let's see here. Really? Okay. Oh, right. Okay. You know what? It's because I refactored it in V3. So that bug was never actually released. Yeah. So the logic is correct in here already. It was actually a refactor that messed that up. So don't need to worry about that bug because that was fixed before the V3 pre-release even went out, and it didn't exist in V2. So we're good. This is the one that I want to look at taking. And it might be a little bit tricky to cherry pick this because I think some of these are in different, oh no, these are not the ones that change namespaces, so these ones should be fine. So let's see here. I might want to add some unit tests around these too. Let's go ahead and cherry pick this. Let's see what we end up with. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because this does, the V3 changes, the reorg branch. One of the things that I wanted to change was instead of using inheritance for these kind of things, you actually use composition, always. So that unfortunately messes up this cherry picking. Does it mess up all these ones? Quite possibly. It did not. Okay, that one worked fine. That one also worked fine, and this one worked fine. Okay. So back to this one, which is trying to do way too much. Well, it picks this up fine. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna do, you can never remember which one's current and which one's incoming. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so this is the one, doesn't say, there's no title up, oh, incoming source, okay. So I wanna compare incoming to base, I think, to see what the actual difference is, and here should be. I don't know why I have that using added up there, that doesn't make any sense. But this is what I actually want to take. And then what I'm going to do is just say, I'm going to take my, I can't say take current or incoming. Interesting. Okay, sure. So this one I'm going to, oh, here we go. Keep current target, take incoming source. Thank you very much. That's so helpful. Not really. So I'm going to keep the current target, which I think is the right one. And then, yeah, so that shows up as not a change. And then I'm going to hop over here and actually apply the change by hand. It just so happens to be easier that way. Certainly stick this thing. Here's my abandon. Oh, right, because this is using. Will. All right. So I was using composition. Let's return. Well, that's true, but who cares? Okay. Yeah. Because that's an action that doesn't. Right, null reference checking with generics. Boy, it's such a pain. I don't think I can actually change that generic argument to be correctly null reference compatible. So I'm just going to tell it. This is my workaround for when generics get in the way of null reference checking. This is null, and I'm telling the compiler it's not null. Yeah. And when you're working with generics, you have to do that way too much. Okay, so let's close out this conflict. I don't care. Just double check here. Oh, okay. So maybe if I pass a noble action, that might work. I don't know. And I'm not even sure what kind of backwards compatibility issues come with null references like that. So if I do that, would that work? It's like it. I don't see any other errors. I'm going to call it good. Let's see here. Yes, this guy's got the same problem here. We gotta pull this in. See that this can be null. And now I'm wondering if I can't do that. Well, we'll see. This one doesn't have null because it uses immutable collections. Same one over here. They use empty collections instead of null. Right. Does this actually build in all environments is the question. I think so. Yes. Okay. Yeah, we're using some nullable annotations here, so I think they're on for all of our environments. Okay. So that should be that. I'm going to pop open my tests here real quick. Actually, I'm going to do this. Live unit testing is a fantastic feature. Sure, I guess. I don't even remember seeing that dialogue before. Just dock this thing over here. Actually, I'm going to stick it right here. Okay, so let's take. Just going to get my git change ready while that's running. Okay, fine. Need a live unit testing configuration. Sure. Add abandon methods. So what this does is, this is occasionally useful. It's not that common, but sometimes you are in a block of code and you want to run disposals on failures, but if you get to the end of the block of the code and it succeeds, what you actually want to do is you want to pass off ownership of that disposal to another piece of code. Say, okay, now you're responsible for disposing of this, and I don't want to dispose it anymore. So this, what the abandon method, that kind of approach, that kind of API allows you to do, is to like essentially build up. Like if you've got one of these collection disposables, you can add more disposables to it, or a regular disposable, you can add more actions to it. That will run if an exception is thrown, and then pass those off, and then those are no longer run by your using statement. Yeah, so essentially abandon means this instance becomes a no-op, and I'm going to return all the actions that I would have done, which then you can pass to another collection disposable or regular disposable. So in this case, the collection disposable returns an IEnumerable disposable, and you can just pass that straight into a new collection disposable, or use the create method. People prefer that. So I'm going to add some unit tests for this while I'm in here, before we dive into our reference counting fixes. So before I check this in, all our current unit tests are passing. That's good. So I'm going to, it has been forever and a day since I've looked at the unit tests in this project. So let's just jump into our regular disposable. Okay, so these are all checking basic behavior. I'm probably going to take this one here, and I'm really the only thing I'm checking. Well, no, actually I do want to run 2 checks on this, don't I? So I'm going to say abandon. Does not invoke the action. I say disposable.abandon. That should fail, yes. And because we want this to check that it was not invoked. And you can see our unit test running alongside here. That is just one of my favorite features of this edition of Visual Studio. Keeping an eye on the chat too, in case anyone has any comments. I can't imagine this is terribly exciting for anyone, but sometimes open source software is just, you do the boring stuff. Sometimes, a lot of the time. So I also want to be able to use abandon for transferring ownership. So this would be like abandon with construction, transfers ownership. Transfers ownership. So I've got an abandon. I'll do a disposable. Keep it like all the other ones, right? So the idea, this I have not actually tested out yet. The idea here is that when we dispose the disposable 2, then it is invoked. That's correct. All right. So this is, you can abandon and just leave it, like this, and then it just doesn't do anything. I would say that's pretty rare. I can't actually think of a use case for that. Well, actually, you know what? I can. You could use abandon to structure a like a transaction you could structure a disposable like a transaction. So you set up the disposable to undo whatever it is you're doing, and then you get to a point where you want to commit, then you call abandon. Don't undo this on failure or on when the code block completes anymore, assuming they're using a using statement. Yeah, so abandon could be useful just on its own for doing transaction-like semantics. And then I think that this is going to be the more common approach, which is why I added a unit test specifically for this, where abandon can be used to create an alternative disposal. It's passing off the ownership of that disposal. Like abandon. Okay, I guess. Let's see. So what else do we need? An async disposal. We need an async version of this for sure. It's probably easier just to do this. Okay, we'll just make these ones asynchronous. And we're using async disposable everywhere. So that, yeah, it's just using async. That's fine. Async, and then this is going to be await disposable that dispose async. So we're just verifying that we got the same behavior for our asynchronous disposables. And then I also want to do the same behavior for our collection disposables. Now our collections are the params. It is a params. Okay, that's cool. So our collections are they're going to have a different return type. Well, I guess this one does too, because this one's going to have this abandon is going to return an action for the disposables, and it's going to return a func of value task. Yeah, func of value task for the asynchronous disposables. Yeah. Now our collections are going to return IEnumerable of iDisposable or IEnumerable of iAsync disposable. So they're collections of these disposable types. So let's do this. This is going to be, let's see. Actually, I'm just going to copy this and just use that same params constructor for these. That should be all I need. Yeah. Now this abandon is returning a collection saying I'm not disposing this collection anymore. It's not returning a single disposable. And it's not returning like a disposable method, like an action. But it is going to return a collection of disposables, which then can be used with the constructor. So this is a way to pass ownership or abandon completely if you want to do transaction semantics. And just for good measure, we're going to add it over to our awaitable or our asynchronous disposables collection disposable as well. Okay. Async disposable with an async in there. Both of these become async task. And then we await dispose async. Wait disposable to async. All right. So now we've got unit tests checking all these. I'm just going to double check my test coverage over here for the new methods. Okay, this is handling a race condition here. If if another thread already abandoned it, then we just return null, which is not going to be easy to test. So I'm not going to try to test that. That would be a pretty rare race condition. Okay, so our test coverage looks good. We added some unit tests, and let's just stage all this. And oops, still have a cherry pick. Yeah, I guess this was a cherry pick, wasn't it? Grr. Forgot about that. Okay, that should be fine. It'll just show up as a massive change. Well, okay, good enough. So we've now got a couple of commits outgoing here. We've got abandon, we've got, all right, okay, so we've got that version relaxing, we've got abandon going in, and now I want to do some documentation work, and this is the really fun part. Nothing like watching someone write documentation, right? Okay, we're going to need that too. And so this will be, yeah, so actually I put it in the change log. I just didn't, what I want to do is I want to put it in the README. So this will be 240. That was well over a year ago. It has been a while. Ooh. Okay. Coming out with a new version now. Abandon methods to ignore. How do I put this? To ignore disposal or transfer ownership. Disposal. Okay, that one. And what else did I do? I did a fix for reduced version of collections. Well, that's what, this is when so I had to bump the version, and I think that this was the highest version at the time, to fix that ShinDLL issue. To reduce version of system collections immutable, dependency to reduce conflicts. Version conflicts, I think. And both of these have issue numbers. Let's pop those in. Okay, so this one, the Nevermind disposable pattern was number 17. And the what's that other one? Number 17. And then we've got number 16. Okay. Number 16. Okay. And that's it, actually. That's all that's going to go in that release. Let me go ahead and bump that version number before I forget. We are at, let's say 240. Come here, you. Yeah, 240. Okay. Now, yes, the README, actually, I want to change this in because the README it's a small enough library that pretty much all the docs are in the README. Okay, so we've got our main types here. I'm going to say, I don't even remember all the semantics for that. So I'm going to pull, I think I documented in the pull request actually. Let's see here, counter disposables. Yeah, so these are the exact semantics of the reference counter disposables plus a couple more. I gotta look at the actual API. Yeah, I got that too. Gotta look at the actual API of what I ended up with. So, yeah, thing is, I don't want to toss all this in the README. I want to say, here's how you actually use it, and then like here's the advanced usage. Right? I want to separate those out because this allows some very advanced usage, which should not be necessary most of the time. So I'm going to actually pull this over to my other monitor, which I'm sorry you can't see. I'm only streaming one monitor, and I'm going to write out from this what we've got. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I'm not going to start with creation, I'm going to say reference disposable team. Or, actually, that's it. It's the only one. Reference for a disposable. So we've got disposable and async disposable. I'm going to toss in a word about abandon right here, I think. You can call abandon to have the and do nothing when it is disposed. Abandon returns the action that it would have taken to create to transfer ownership. Disposal actions. Okay. And then I'm going to use very similar terminology for the collection disposable because it's actually a pretty, similar thing. All right, so you can call abandon to have the collection disposable slash async collection disposable. Abandon returns the disposable. Love it when VS Code tries to be helpful like that. Not helpful there. Okay. So we've got. I keep thinking about maybe doing a better API for this too, but it's just not a common use case, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so we've got the abandons documented. I'm just going to go ahead and just that one change. And now we got to document the reference counted disposables, which is going to be fun. Reference counted disposables. Okay. Let's see. I just want to double check that actually those semantics and APIs didn't change first. Let's see here. We've got. I'm gonna have to keep this on my other screen. Sorry. So this is just examining the code. We've got a reference counted disposable. A create, yep, and also a try create. I don't even remember what that one. Oh, right. Okay, because yeah, and then they create with new reference counter, which is kind of a more advanced one. Almost all the time, you're just going to call .create, and that'll return you a counted disposable, which has you can access the target. You can create another reference by calling add reference. You can create a weak reference by calling add weak reference. I'm just making sure that all my notes in the PR didn't change names or anything when I implemented them. Let's see, weak reference, okay. And weak reference, yes. And got the target, and then it's got these convenience properties, true. Although, did I make that a separate interface? I think I did when I did in the version 3 stuff. I did not do that here. So disposable, for example, which I guess would be on single disposable, wouldn't it? Yeah. So these are all like separate properties. In the version 3 era, I had like these became wrapped up in an interface, but that's not the case in V2. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah, so the reference counted disposable. I reference counted disposable. And this is an interface really just for this reason. It allows generic variants. That's really the only reason it's an interface, which is kind of unfortunate, but oh well. So let's see, you can add more references, you can add weak references, and get the target, that's it. The main operations. Weak reference, you can try to get the target, and you can try to get a strong reference, essentially. I don't really have to get target in there. It might be occasionally helpful. Okay, so I did add unit tests for these. That's what I should probably look at for the usage over here. Got thing. We've got Okay, this is mostly just checking edge cases, not actual use. That's fine. Okay, so I think I've got it all in my head now, the API. So I'm just going to start typing it out and see how far we get today. We can create a reference counted is it a reference counted disposable? Yeah. Disposable wrapping a disposable. I don't like target there, I prefer source, but to keep the terminology consistent, it's called target everywhere else in the API. By passing the target disposable to it's counted disposable.create. Okay. All reference. I just want to point out this. Or this thought. I want to see if I can express it correctly. Reference count disposable represents an increment of the reference count and it decrements that reference count when disposed. When the reference count reaches 0, the target disposable is disposed. I think that's a pretty straightforward description of how reference counted disposables work. Specifically, this part right here. This is what I really want to get across. That your reference counted disposable actually, when you dispose that, it decrements the reference count. So it represents an increment of the reference count. Okay. The reference count by calling disposable. Add, it was add reference count. Oh wait, thought I had the API. I had it. Reference. Which returns an independent. It's counted disposable. Sent its own increment of the reference count. Okay, so I think that makes sense. A reference counted until disposed. Well, is it until disposed? I don't know actually. I think, does it allow that? I think, yeah. Throws out a disposed exception if this instance is disposed, yeah. Okay, so before. Trying to think of the best way to put this here. You know, I'm just going to say it can access a reference count. Yeah. Counted disposable. Can access its underlying target disposable. I'm just going to do that. That'll be easy enough. And that's all. So that's all I'm going to say for that section, and then I'm going to come in here to this advanced, because all these other ones have like, oh, well, you can use it this way, and then here's the advanced usage. So that's what I'm doing here. And there's two different styles. I'm going to break this up into two different advanced sections. So I'm going to say weak reference counted disposables. And then weak, or no, sorry. Customer reference count. Okay, so it's almost time for me to go, but I just want to push this out. We're almost done. Wow, this is all still in my head. So weak reference counted disposables. Say, yeah, so you can create a weak. I'm gonna hyphen all these to make sure people just to make sure that that's like, here's the single concept. It's a weak reference counted disposable. Add weak reference, right? Yeah, so we've got a weak reference there. Weak reference, hyphen all those. Counted disposables, weekly reference, the target disposable, and the reference count. They do not represent an increment of the reference counter. Doesn't counter anywhere else, so it's a count. Okay. What else can you do with a weak reference? Not a whole lot. Increment the, you can attempt to increment the reference count for a weak reference counted disposable by calling, I think it's just add reference, right? Oh, let's try add reference. reference, right, of course. So this is going to be, oops. Just gonna copy here instead of having to type it all out. T, thank you for helping Visual Studio. Dot triad reference. I meant Visual Studio Code. If successful, this method returns a strong reference counted disposable. You can also attempt to access the underlying target. Let's try get target. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. I think target returns null if it's been, yeah, even if it's been disposed. So not even if it's been garbage collected, but just if it's been disposed. Is that worth putting in here? Probably not. Okay. And then the custom reference counting. You know what? If I even need this, I mean to be documented. It's so advanced. Yeah, it's an API, I better document it. Okay. Reference counted disposables by default use an ephemeron or the reference count. If so calling, let's create this method on the same target instance, target disposable instance, will share the underlying reference count. If the reference count could already be 0, you can call try create to avoid the, would it be an object disposed exception? I think it's an object disposed exception because that kind of made sense to use there. Yeah. To avoid the object disposed exception. The reference count, I'm going to say if the reference count is already 0, this method will throw object disposed exception, objection disposed exception. Yeah, I'm just going to copy this. Objection. To avoid this exception, you can call try create. Okay. If you want to use a new reference count and not use the ephemeron, you can call, man, I don't know why I added this API, to be honest, because I can't think of a single use case for this. Oh well. It's already in there. It's already public. So so the original thinking behind this, and this is still a possibility for the future, is that some types can have their own reference counts like inside of them. So like say have like an I reference count interface or something that allows, explicitly implemented, that would give hooks for incrementing and decrementing the reference count. And that would allow, so that was the original idea here. I should point out this. Yeah. So why would you want to use it? This is the only reason I can think of. This usage avoids ephemerons, which put pressure on the garbage collector. So if you're using like a ton of reference counted disposables, ephemerons can impact the performance of the garbage collector. So that's why that API really exists. And if you want to get even more advanced, then you can do the whole this object maintains its own reference count thing, and then you don't even have a separate object on the heap at all. That one, this library does not support yet, but it is possible to add it in the future if we need that. Okay. So, okay. So this is like the easier to mess up. Well, actually, neither one is. Yeah, I don't know. This one is, well, actually, I guess this one's easier to mess up in a different way, isn't it? Oh well, the API is already shipped, so I'm not changing it now. But they each have their drawbacks. Okay. Anyway, so documented the reference counters finally. Document reference counted disposables. Got it. And then double check our change log looks good. Our version, and yeah, that's it. Okay, so I'm just going to say B240 commit, and we will push. Nothing like developing right on master, right? This is the this is the single maintainer kind of library. Live dangerously. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out the those two issues that we closed here, and let's see here. I think we're about done for the day. This is mainly what I wanted to do. So let's see here. Jump back to. All right. So issues. Right. What is this? Oh, yeah. Well, not today. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna put a note over here. I'm not logged in. Okay, well, I'll do this all in a little bit. It's kind of a pain to log in on this computer. Okay, yeah, so I'll close these out in a minute. The new docs should already be up. Just like to look quickly at those, and I got a failing build. Okay. So we've got abandoned documented here. Okay, that sounds good. And we've got abandoned for our collections, and then we've got reference counted disposables. Just really quickly reading over these. Okay, I think that looks good. Right, so look at the action here. Yeah, that's what I thought. So every once in a while, the GitHub Actions will change, and since it's been like a year since I've run this build script, something changed here. I'm gonna have to take a look at my build script and fix it now. Okay, so it'll just be a little bit, but I will probably take a look at this later today and fix the builds and then push out that update. So for now, I'm going to work, so I will see you all later. Thank you for coming, and it has been yet another fun day of open source development, doing yak shaving. So thank you all for coming. I will see you another time.